So there I was, Commander Jake Morrison, sitting in the most expensive conference room in the galaxy, watching a bunch of aliens decide whether humanity deserved to exist. And let me tell you, the irony was not lost on me that they called me Hothead. Morrison to represent our species in a discussion about emotional stability. The Galactic Council chamber looked like someone had taken every sci-fi movie set and thrown them in a blender. Floating platforms, holographic displays, and aliens that looked like they'd been designed by committee. At the center sat High Arbitrator Zelnox, a being so ancient and wrinkled that calling him a prune would be an insult to dried fruit everywhere. The human representative will now present his species' defense, Zelnox announced in a voice that sounded like gravel being processed through a synthesizer. I stood up, straightened my uniform, and looked around at the assembled representatives. The Zorblaxians, with their oversized brains and tiny bodies, were practically vibrating with intellectual superiority. The Floofians looked like walking cotton balls with bureaucratic complexes. And the Crystalline Collective just sat there, humming in perfect harmony like the universe's most annoying wind chimes. Right, I began. So apparently, you've all decided that humans are too emotional to join your little space club. Is that about the size of it? Dr. QX of the Zorblaxian Science Council rose from his platform. Commander Morrison, our extensive analysis has revealed that humans experience an average of 17 distinct emotional states per standard galactic hour. This is 43.7 times the acceptable threshold for civilized species. Acceptable threshold, I repeated. Right. And who exactly decided that caring about things was a bad trait to have in space? The Floofian representative, Counselor Nim, shuffled his papers with mechanical precision. According to Galactic Regulation 47B, subsection 12, emotional volatility presents a clear danger to interstellar peace and commerce. I couldn't help but laugh. Peace and commerce. Got it. So crying at sad movies is a threat to galactic stability, but your people filing complaints about everything in triplicate is perfectly reasonable. Human emotional responses are chaotic and unpredictable, Dr. QX continued, projecting a holographic display of human brain scans. Observe, love makes you irrational. Anger clouds judgment, sadness decreases productivity, and joy leads to poor decision-making. And yet, I countered, love made us build hospitals for strangers. Anger made us fight injustice. Sadness taught us empathy. Joy inspired our greatest art. But sure, let's focus on the spreadsheet of productivity metrics. The Crystalline Collective hummed louder, which I'd learned meant they were conferring. Finally, their spokesperson, Crystal Unit Prime, spoke in their eerie harmonic voice. Humans are chaos incarnate. They weep at fictional narratives. They sacrifice personal gain for abstract concepts. They form emotional attachments to non-essential beings. Non-essential beings, I said slowly. You mean like pets, or friends, or family? Precisely. Such attachments create exploitable weaknesses. High Arbitrator Zelnox raised one gnarled hand. The evidence is overwhelming. Humanity's emotional instability poses a clear threat to galactic order. The vote is called. And that's how it happened. 47 species voted to quarantine Earth. 3 abstained. 0 voted in our favor. Not even us, since apparently our opinion didn't count. The decision is final, Zelnox declared. Humanity will be contained within their solar system until such time as they evolve beyond their emotional limitations. As the session ended and the aliens filed out, chattering excitedly about their logical solution, I sat there thinking about how these supposedly superior beings had just made a decision based entirely on fear and prejudice. But emotions were the problem. Right. Walking back to my shuttle, I couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. They thought our emotions made us weak. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. 3 months later, I was standing on the observation deck of Earth Station Alpha, staring out at what the aliens euphemistically called our protective barrier. It looked like a giant snow globe, if snow globes were made of energy fields and condensation. Commander, incoming transmission from the Zorblaxian monitoring station, announced Rosa Martinez, my communications officer. Rosa had the unfortunate distinction of being the person who had to listen to alien bureaucrats all day without losing her mind. She was either the most patient person in the solar system or the best at hiding homicidal thoughts. Put it through, I sighed. The view screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Krex, a Zorblaxian with delusions of military grandeur and a head so large it probably had its own gravitational field. Human Morrison, this is your daily compliance check. Are you experiencing any emotional instabilities today? Well, Krex, I'm feeling pretty stable. You know, considering I'm trapped in a cosmic fishbowl while being lectured by someone who looks like a walking brain tumor. Murphy O'Brien, our chief engineer, snorted from his position at the engineering console. Murphy was the kind of guy who could fix a warp drive with duct tape and sheer stubbornness, which made him perfect for our current situation. Such sarcasm demonstrates emotional dysregulation, Admiral Krex noted, making marks on some kind of alien clipboard. Dr. Vex, please record this behavior for analysis. Dr. Vex appeared on screen, his massive brain pulsing with what I assumed was intellectual superiority. Fascinating. The human continues to employ humor as a defensive mechanism, despite his obviously precarious situation. Yeah, it's almost like we use humor to cope with stress instead of having emotional breakdowns, I replied. Wild concept, I know. From another channel, Counselor Blim's voice crackled through the speakers. Blim was a Floofian bureaucrat who had apparently been assigned to monitor our psychological deterioration for their extensive files. According to my calculations, Blim announced in his nasally voice, humans should begin experiencing severe separation anxiety within the next standard week. I have prepared Form 47J for the documentation of your species' inevitable emotional collapse. That's very thoughtful of you, Blim. I'll be sure to cry directly onto your forms when the time comes. After the transmission ended, Rosa, Murphy, and I exchanged looks. We'd been having these delightful check-ins every day since the quarantine began, and each conversation confirmed what we already suspected. These aliens had no idea what they were dealing with. Sir, Rosa said carefully, the monitoring stations are placing bets on how long it'll take before we emotionally implode. Current odds have us lasting another 2 weeks, maximum. 2 weeks? Murphy laughed. That's insulting. We've survived reality TV, social media, and pineapple pizza debates. 2 weeks? Amateur hour. I walked over to the sealed section of the station, the part our alien friends didn't know existed. Well, gentlemen and ladies, I think it's time we showed them exactly what human emotions are capable of. Murphy grinned. Project Fields is ready for deployment, Commander. For the past 3 months, while our galactic neighbors had been congratulating themselves on their logical solution to the human problem, we'd been busy. See, they made one critical error in their assessment of human emotions. They assumed our feelings made us weak. They never considered that we might weaponize them. Rosa, send a message to all Earth stations. Tell them it's time to turn our greatest weakness into their worst nightmare. As the 3 of us headed toward the classified section, I couldn't help but smile. The aliens thought they were observing animals in a zoo, waiting for us to break down and prove their point about emotional instability. Instead, they were about to discover that the animals had been building weapons. And we were feeling pretty good about it. Gentleman, lady, I announced as we entered the classified lab, welcome to Project Fields, or as I like to call it, the biggest middle finger humanity has ever given to the universe. The lab looked like a cross between a weapons facility and a therapy center. Engineers worked alongside psychologists, physicists collaborated with poets, and in the center of it all sat the crown jewel of human ingenuity, the Fields engine. Dr. Kim Nakamura, our lead researcher, approached with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just solved the universe's biggest puzzle. Commander, the final tests are complete. We've successfully isolated and weaponized 17 different human emotional states. 17? Murphy whistled. That's exactly the number the Zorblaxians said was too many. Poetic justice, I replied. Kim, give me the breakdown. She gestured toward the central console, where various emotional energy readings danced across holographic displays. It started when we realized that emotions aren't just chemical reactions, they're energy patterns. Every feeling generates a unique quantum signature that we can harvest, amplify, and deploy. Rosa examined one of the weapon prototypes with obvious admiration. You mean all those times the aliens mocked us for crying? We could have been charging batteries? Better than batteries, Kim laughed. Crying generates what we call melancholy waves, perfect for disrupting enemy communications by making them too sad to function. But that's just the beginning. She led us to the weapons demonstration area, where a series of impressive-looking devices were mounted on testing platforms. Murphy, would you like to do the honors? Murphy cracked his knuckles. With pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, I present the Rage Cannon. He hefted a weapon that looked like someone had crossed a rocket launcher with an anger management seminar. This baby channels pure, concentrated human fury and fires it at enemy targets. One shot can overload a Zorblaxian logical processor faster than you can say road rage. The beauty, Kim added, is that it's powered by genuine human anger. All those years of dealing with customer service, traffic jams, and people who don't use turn signals? We've been stockpiling ammunition without knowing it. Next, she showed us something that looked like a riot shield made of crystallized heartbreak. Heartbreak shields not only deflect energy weapons, they reflect pure emotional anguish back at attackers. Imagine trying to fire a laser while suddenly experiencing every romantic rejection you've ever had, all at once. Diabolical, I said approvingly. And here's my personal favorite, Rosa said, pointing to a device that resembled a fishing net made of light. Nostalgia nets. They trap enemy ships in waves of bittersweet memory, making crews too busy reminiscing about the good old days to operate weapons systems. Murphy had moved on to what looked like a torpedo with a smiley face painted on it. Sarcasm torpedoes. I designed these myself. They deliver concentrated sarcasm directly to enemy command centers. One hit, and the target becomes physically incapable of taking themselves seriously. That's just evil, Murphy. Thank you, sir. Kim pulled up another display showing a communication array that pulsed with warm, golden light, and Rosa's contribution, homesickness beacons. They broadcast concentrated longing for home across subspace. Enemy crews become so homesick they abandon their missions to call their mothers. The science is beautiful in its simplicity, Kim explained. Emotions are universal, but different species experience them differently. Zorblaxians process everything through logic, so emotional input causes cascade failures in their thought patterns. Floofians are naturally empathetic, so they absorb emotional energy like sponges. And the Crystalline Collective shares a hive mind, so one emotional disruption affects their entire network. I looked around at the assembled arsenal, feeling something I hadn't experienced in months: hope. Not the desperate kind, but the confident variety that comes from holding a royal flush in a poker game where everyone else thinks you're bluffing. How long before we can deploy? We're ready now, Commander. The question is when you want to drop the hammer. Outside the lab, I could see the alien monitoring stations maintaining their vigil, smug in their certainty that we were on the verge of emotional collapse. They'd been so busy measuring our feelings that they never noticed we were organizing them. Kim, what's our maximum range? With the amplification arrays, we can hit targets anywhere in the solar system. Maybe beyond. I smiled, feeling the familiar warmth of righteous anger building in my chest. Then let's give our galactic neighbors something to really analyze. After all, they wanted to study human emotions. We were about to give them a masterclass. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. The aliens had organized what they called an emotional superiority celebration to commemorate 3 months of successfully containing humanity's dangerous feelings. They'd even invited representatives from across the galaxy to observe their triumph over irrational behavior. Rosa, patch me through to all Earth stations. I commanded from the bridge of our newly retrofitted flagship. We'd renamed it the USS Feelings, because if you're going to weaponize emotions, you might as well own the joke. All stations report ready, Commander, Rosa announced. Project Feels is fully operational. Through the view screen, I could see the alien fleet arranged in a perfect ceremonial formation around our containment field. Admiral Krex's command ship sat at the center, broadcasting what I assumed was a very logical and emotionally stable victory speech to the assembled crowd. Murphy, status on our emotional weapons? Rage cannons charged and ready. Sarcasm torpedoes loaded. Heartbreak shields at full deflection. And Commander? Murphy grinned. I've been saving up 3 months' worth of frustration for this moment. Excellent. Rosa, open a channel to the alien fleet. Channel open, sir. I cleared my throat and put on my best diplomatic voice. Admiral Krex, this is Commander Morrison. I wanted to thank you for this wonderful celebration. It's really touched our hearts. Krex's massive head appeared on screen, pulsing with what passed for Zorblaxian amusement. Human Morrison, your gratitude is noted but unnecessary. We are merely celebrating the triumph of logic over chaos. Oh, we're celebrating too, Admiral. In fact, we've prepared a little demonstration of human emotion that we think you'll find educational. That's when I gave the signal. The first wave hit them like a tsunami of pure feeling. Our rage cannons opened fire, sending concentrated bursts of human fury across space. The effect on the Zorblaxian ships was immediate and hilarious. Their logical processors, designed to handle pure rational thought, suddenly found themselves drowning in raw, unfiltered anger. What is happening? Admiral Krex screamed as alarms blared across his bridge. My crew is experiencing irrational thoughts. They're shouting at the communication systems. That's just the appetizer, I replied cheerfully. Murphy, deploy the heartbreak shields. Suddenly, every energy weapon fired at us was not only deflected but returned with interest. Zorblaxian gunners found themselves overwhelmed by waves of romantic disappointment. Floofian bureaucrats began weeping uncontrollably at their desks. Even the Crystalline Collective's perfect harmony began cracking as individual units experienced their first pangs of loneliness. Dr. Vex appeared on another channel, his usually composed demeanor completely shattered. This is impossible. We're experiencing emotional contamination on a fleet-wide scale. My research team has locked themselves in their quarters, claiming everything they've ever done is meaningless. That would be our existential crisis bombs, I explained helpfully. Don't worry, the effect is temporary. Mostly. Counselor Blim's frantic voice cut through the chaos. I can't complete my reports. Every time I try to file a complaint, I start questioning the bureaucratic process. This is against all regulations. Murphy, I think Blim needs a dose of decision anxiety. What do you think? Matt? Absolutely, sir. The decision anxiety rays hit the Floofian command structure like a sledgehammer. Suddenly, beings who had built their entire civilization on filing the proper forms in triplicate couldn't decide which form to use. Their fleet drifted aimlessly as captains spent hours debating whether to retreat, advance, or request additional paperwork. But the real masterstroke came when Rosa activated the nostalgia nets. Entire sections of the alien fleet found themselves trapped in waves of bittersweet memory. Zorblaxian warriors began reminiscing about their academic achievements. Floofian officers started missing the simpler days of municipal permit processing. Even the Crystalline Collective began harmonizing about the good old eons. Admiral Krex, I said, watching his command ship slowly drift as his crew became lost in memories of their logical glory days. I hope you're taking good notes. This is what you wanted to study, right? Human emotional instability? Make it stop, Krex pleaded, his voice cracking with what I was pretty sure was his first experience with desperation. We surrender. We acknowledge that emotions are powerful, I suggested. We were wrong. Please, my navigation officer is crying into his console and my weapons specialist has decided to become a poet. I looked around at my crew, all of them grinning with the satisfaction of a job well done. 3 months of condescension and imprisonment, and now the superior aliens were begging us to stop feeling things at them. Rosa, prepare for the final phase. It's time to deploy the big guns. Sir, are you sure? The teenage angst weapon is still experimental. I smiled. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. And sometimes you have to fight logic with the most irrational force in the universe. The real show was about to begin. Murphy, Rosa, I announced, initiate Phase 2. Let's show them what real emotional complexity looks like. What happened next could only be described as beautiful chaos. Murphy's teenage angst weapon deployed across the alien fleet like a storm of concentrated adolescent fury and confusion. Suddenly, the most logical beings in the galaxy found themselves experiencing the emotional equivalent of being 16 years old and convinced that nobody understood them. Admiral Krex's voice came through the comm, cracking with an emotion he'd never experienced before: self-doubt. Nothing makes sense anymore. Why are we even fighting? What's the point of anything? I hate my job and my parents don't understand me. That's interesting, Admiral, considering you're 300 years old and your parents died of old age 2 centuries ago. The Zorblaxian fleet began making decisions that would have seemed impossible an hour earlier. Ships broke formation to write poetry in the cosmic dust. Others started broadcasting deeply personal logs about their feelings to the entire galaxy. One Zorblaxian captain actually challenged his entire crew to a dance-off to prove who was more emotionally evolved. Dr. Vex was having an even worse time. Commander Morrison, please. My research team has concluded that love is the only thing that matters in the universe. They've abandoned their scientific objectivity and are now composing love songs to entropy. That's beautiful, Doctor. Really touching. Meanwhile, the Floofian fleet was experiencing what could only be described as an empathy cascade failure. Their natural bureaucratic efficiency had been replaced by an overwhelming need to understand everyone else's feelings. Counselor Blim was simultaneously processing the emotions of his entire species, which had created a feedback loop of cosmic proportions. I can feel everyone's feelings. Blim wailed over the comm. The janitor on Deck 7 is sad about his lunch. The navigation officer on the Floofian Pride misses her childhood pet. I need to file forms to help them all, but I'm too busy crying about their problems to complete the paperwork. But the real masterpiece was what happened to the Crystalline Collective. Rosa's individual identity beams had done something unprecedented. They'd given each unit of the hive mind their own personal emotional experience. For the first time in their species' history, they were thinking as individuals instead of a collective. "This is Crystal Unit Prime," came the confused, harmonic voice. "Or am I Crystal Unit 7? I can't remember who I am anymore. We used to sing in perfect harmony, but now we're all humming different songs." Crystal Unit 47 just declared that he's always hated our traditional melodies. Their fleet's perfect synchronized movements devolved into chaos as individual crystals began making their own navigation decisions. Some wanted to go home, others wanted to explore, and a few had apparently decided to become space pirates because it seemed more exciting than collective consciousness. Rosa broadcast our greatest hits package across all frequencies. The emotional compilation. "Are you sure, sir?" "Ew it. Ew it." Suddenly, the entire alien fleet was subjected to humanity's greatest emotional achievements, broadcast directly into their ships. They got everything: Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the ending of Old Yeller, every romantic comedy ever made, the final season of their favorite TV shows, and the complete works of every poet who ever wrote about heartbreak. The results were immediate and devastating. Zorblaxian warriors began sobbing uncontrollably at Casablanca. Floofian bureaucrats started writing resignation letters so they could pursue their dreams of becoming artists. The Crystalline Collective split into 17 different boy bands, each trying to out-harmonize the others. "Murphy, how are our energy levels holding up?" "Emotional reserves are at maximum capacity, Commander." Turns out that watching aliens discover feelings is incredibly satisfying. We're actually generating more power than we're using. That's when I noticed something beautiful happening. The alien containment field around Earth was beginning to crack. Not from weapons or explosives, but from the sheer emotional pressure building up inside it. The aliens had built their prison to contain our feelings, but they'd never considered what would happen if those feelings fought back. This is Admiral Krex to all fleet commanders, came the broken transmission. I think I understand now. We were wrong about humans. So very wrong. They don't just have emotions, they've mastered them. While we were analyzing their feelings, they were turning them into art, into weapons, into strength. The containment field flickered and sparked as waves of human emotion pushed against its boundaries. Love, anger, hope, sarcasm, teenage angst, and pure stubborn determination all combined into something the aliens had never seen before: weaponized human spirit. Rosa, open a channel to the entire alien fleet. Channel open, Commander. I looked out at the chaos we'd created, at ships drifting aimlessly while their crews grappled with their first real emotions, and felt something I hadn't expected: sympathy. Attention, alien fleet. This is Commander Morrison. I'm going to make you an offer you probably won't understand, but I'm going to make it anyway. The destruction was beautiful, but it was time to show them what human emotions could really do. Here's the deal, I announced to the emotionally devastated alien fleet. You spent months analyzing our feelings, trying to understand why we cry at movies and get angry at injustice. You concluded we were broken, primitive, too chaotic for civilized society. Through the view screen, I could see Admiral Krex slumped in his command chair, his massive brain apparently processing its first existential crisis. Dr. Vex was visible in the background, writing what appeared to be very bad poetry on his research notes. But here's what you missed in all your logical analysis: emotions aren't a bug in human programming. They're a feature. Every tear we cry makes us stronger. Every moment of anger teaches us what's worth fighting for. Every laugh we share builds connections across the void. Counselor Blim's voice crackled through the calm, shaky but determined. Commander Morrison, we formally surrender. But please, we need help. My people are experiencing feelings they don't understand. We have no framework for processing these emotions. Our entire bureaucratic structure is based on logical order. And now everyone's making decisions based on how they feel instead of what the regulations say. I looked at Rosa and Murphy, seeing my own thoughts reflected in their expressions. We'd won. Completely, utterly won. The beings who had imprisoned us for being too emotional were now begging for emotional guidance. Admiral Krex, what's your status? Terrible. Commander Morrison. Wonderful. Confusing. I think I'm experiencing what you call mixed feelings, and it's the most beautiful catastrophe I've ever encountered. My tactical officer has decided to become a musician. My weapons engineer is crying at the structural beauty of our own ship design. And dominance. I think I might be proud of them. The Crystalline Collective's harmonics had evolved into something resembling a very confused barbershop quartet. We no longer understand our purpose. They sang in surprisingly melodic discord. Individual thought is chaotic, but also surprisingly liberating. We are many, but we are also one. But we are also confused. Please help us understand this paradox. And that's how humanity went from galactic pariahs to the universe's most in-demand emotional consultants. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new office at the Galactic Feelings Bureau, an organization that would have sounded like a joke a year ago but had become the most important institution in known space. The same aliens who had mocked human emotions were now paying us premium rates to teach them how to feel properly. Commander Morrison, my assistant, announced, Admiral Krex is here for his weekly emotional intelligence training. Krex entered, looking remarkably different from the smug military leader I'd first met. His posture was less rigid, his expression more thoughtful. Good morning, Commander. I've been practicing what you taught me about constructive anger, and I think I'm making progress. That's great to hear, Admiral. How are your crew adjustments going? Remarkably well. My former weapons engineer has formed a band called Logical Paradox, and their music is actually quite moving. My tactical officer has started a support group for warriors learning to process combat trauma. And my communications officer has become our ship's unofficial therapist. Dr. Vex had been transformed even more dramatically. His research into human emotions had evolved into genuine understanding, and he'd become one of our most effective teachers. He'd published several papers on the logical benefits of illogical thinking, that had become bestsellers across 17 star systems. Counselor Blim had perhaps undergone the most surprising change. The Floofian bureaucracy had discovered that adding emotional consideration to their decision-making process actually made them more efficient. They'd redesigned their entire governmental structure around something they called compassionate administration, and other species were lining up to learn their methods. Rosa, what's on the schedule for today? 3 species requesting consultation on implementing emotional education in their school systems. 5 governments asking for help with diplomatic empathy training. And the Andromedan Trade Federation wants to discuss adding joy as a factor in their economic models. Murphy walked in, grinning as always. Commander, you're going to love this. The Regellian Empire just placed an order for 50 inspiration generators. Apparently, their productivity increased by 300% after their workers started feeling genuinely motivated instead of just logically compelled. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the bustling space station that had become the hub of the galaxy's emotional renaissance. Ships from hundreds of species came and went daily, their crews eager to learn what humans had known all along. Feelings weren't a weakness to overcome. They were a strength to embrace. You know what the best part is? I said to my team. They still don't really get it. They're trying to systematize emotions, create logical frameworks for feelings, develop efficient methods for processing happiness. They're approaching emotions like a software update instead of the messy, beautiful, chaotic experience they actually are. Should we tell them? Rosa asked. Nah, I replied, watching a Zorblaxian freighter captain arguing passionately with dock control about parking regulations, but his former logical composure replaced by genuine frustration and somehow obvious affection for his job. Let them figure it out themselves. Besides, watching the universe's most logical species learn to be human is the most entertaining thing that's happened to our species since we invented television. The irony was perfect. We'd been quarantined for being too emotional, and now the entire galaxy was paying us to teach them how to feel. We'd gone from cosmic outcasts to the universe's emotional support system. And the best part? We were getting paid very, very well to do what came naturally, being gloriously, chaotically, beautifully human. After all, it turns out the galaxy needed a little more chaos in their lives. They just hadn't known it yet.